Can you really get rich with compound interest? The secret: investors must know compound interest won't make you rich unless you understand this one critical secret. Everyone talks about compound interest. You've probably heard the classic line, "The most powerful force in the universe is compound interest." Maybe you've even seen the charts online showing a single dollar turning into thousands, or tens of thousands, over decades. It's tempting to believe that simply investing a little money and leaving it alone will automatically make you rich. I've spent over a decade working in corporate finance, advising companies and individuals on investment strategy, risk management, and wealth creation. I'm also a certified public accountant, which means I've seen firsthand how money grows, or stagnates, depending on how it's managed. Over the years, I've helped investors build portfolios that not only survive market turbulence but thrive over the long term. I've also seen people with the best intentions leave enormous wealth on the table simply because they didn't understand compound interest properly. In this video, I'll combine my corporate experience, personal investing stories, and actionable strategies to teach you exactly how to make compound interest work for you. We'll cover everything from the basics to advanced tips that most how-to-invest guides never mention. I remember the first time I truly understood compound interest, and how little I actually knew about it. Early in my career, I had saved a small sum and decided to invest in a mutual fund. I thought, I'll just leave it there. In 20 years, it will be massive. Fast forward 5 years, I checked my account and realized I hadn't gained nearly as much as I expected. What went wrong? The answer was simple: I didn't reinvest dividends, and I underestimated fees and inflation. I had been thinking about compounding in theory, but I wasn't using it effectively in practice. That experience taught me a critical lesson: compound interest is only as powerful as your strategy. Leaving money alone isn't enough. You have to understand the mechanics, optimize reinvestment, minimize fees, and make time your ally. Let's break it down. Compound interest isn't magic, it's a formula. For investors, it can be simplified as future value equals principal times 1 plus rate time. This means your money grows not only on your initial investment but also on the interest or returns it generates over time. Let me give you an example from my personal portfolio. I started with $10,000 in a diversified ETF earning an average of 7% per year. If I reinvested all dividends, in 20 years, that $10,000 turned into approximately $38,700. Not bad, right? Now consider if I had started with $100,000 under the same conditions. After 20 years, it would grow to $387,000. This illustrates a key investor principle: the more you can invest early and consistently, the more powerful compounding becomes. Time is your greatest advantage. Starting early, even with smaller amounts, can often outperform someone who invests a larger sum later but waits too long. Common investor mistakes with compound interest: here's where most investors go wrong. 1. Starting late. Many people wait to invest until they have more money. The result? Years of lost compounding potential. 2. Not reinvesting dividends. Those small dividend payments, if reinvested, are compounding engines. Ignore them, and you slow your growth drastically. 3. High fees. Mutual funds, management fees, and trading costs can silently erode your gains. I've seen portfolios lose tens of thousands over decades due to fees alone. 4. Ignoring inflation. If your returns don't outpace inflation, your gains are illusory. $100,000 today might feel like wealth, but in 20 years, its purchasing power could be much less. 5. Emotional decisions. Selling during market dips or chasing hot stocks interrupts compounding. Staying invested consistently is key. I've seen these mistakes in both my personal experience and in my clients' portfolios. Correcting them early is the difference between mediocre returns and wealth-building compounding. Case studies of successful investors to truly understand the power of compound interest. It helps to see it in action. I've studied many investors, both famous and everyday clients, and the patterns are consistent: patience, discipline, and smart reinvestment. Take Warren Buffett, for example. He famously started investing at age 11. By consistently reinvesting his gains, avoiding unnecessary spending, and staying focused on long-term growth, Buffett turned modest beginnings into billions. What stands out isn't just his capital, it's his commitment to letting compounding do the work over decades. In my own experience, I once advised a client who was skeptical about starting small. They invested only $200 a month into a diversified ETF portfolio. Over 20 years, with reinvested dividends and steady contributions, that modest amount grew to over $150,000. Many people overlook this because they think you need a huge lump sum to benefit, but that's simply not true. The lesson here is clear: compound interest rewards time, consistency, and smart decisions. Even small, steady investments can snowball into significant wealth if applied correctly. How to calculate compound interest yourself? Understanding the mechanics of compounding is critical. Let's break it down. The formula is simple. Future value equals principal times 1 plus rate. NN times time. Principal equals your starting amount. Rate equals annual interest rate. As a decimal, N equals number of times interest is compounded per year. Time equals years invested. Here's a real example from my portfolio. I invested $10,000 in a growth ETF at 7% annual return, compounded monthly. Using the formula, after 10 years, the account grew to $20,000, doubling in value simply by letting compounding work. For investors, the takeaway is simple: don't just rely on charts, run your own numbers. Use spreadsheets or online calculators to model different scenarios. Test varying contribution amounts, interest rates, and investment periods. Seeing the results visually can be motivating and will help you make smarter decisions. The power of continuous learning and investing. Compound interest works best when paired with financial knowledge. I've seen many investors leave money on the table simply because they weren't aware of certain strategies or tools. In my career, I made it a habit to study market trends, tax strategies, and portfolio management techniques. Each year, I applied what I learned to my personal investments, and the compounding effect became even more powerful. For instance, understanding tax-efficient accounts allowed me to maximize returns without extra contributions, effectively letting compounding work faster. Continuous learning also helps you avoid mistakes. By knowing how fees, inflation, and market volatility impact your investments, you make decisions that protect and accelerate your wealth. That's why I encourage all investors to read, take courses, and stay updated. Knowledge compounds just like money. Here's the part most people never hear: compound interest is a tool, not a magic wand. You need strategy. 1. Pick the right investments. For compounding to work, you need growth-oriented assets, ETFs, stocks, or diversified portfolios with consistent returns. Risk management is critical here. 2. Use tax-advantaged accounts. In my early career, I saw investors paying unnecessary taxes on dividends or interest. Using accounts like IRAs, 401ks, or their equivalents in your country allows your money to grow faster because taxes don't chip away at compounding. 3. Automate reinvestments. I automate all dividends and gains back into the portfolio. This simple step ensures compounding happens without relying on memory or discipline alone. 4. Consistency over size. Even modest investments made consistently beat large, sporadic contributions. I've seen clients start with $100 per month and end up with six-figure growth purely through discipline and reinvestment. 5. Leverage your mindset. Wealthy investors think long-term. Short-term volatility doesn't scare them. I learned this early. Compounding rewards patience, not panic. If you want to maximize compound interest, here's what I recommend. Think in decades, not years. Compounding accelerates over time. The first 10 years build the base, the next 10 explode growth. Minimize withdrawals. Every time you take money out, you reduce future gains exponentially. I treat my investing accounts as untouchable long-term assets. Behavioral discipline. Use reminders, automatic contributions, and visual growth charts. Seeing the effect of compounding keeps motivation high. Adjust for inflation and fees. Always calculate real returns, not nominal ones. That's why I monitor portfolios annually and adjust strategies as markets or fees change. Teach others. Sharing these principles reinforces your own discipline. I mentor junior analysts and clients on compounding. They internalize it and I reinforce it. It's a simple psychological hack that strengthens habits. 6 common myths about compound interest. When it comes to investing, one of the biggest barriers for new investors, or even experienced ones, is misunderstanding compound interest. Over the years, I've seen countless clients make mistakes not because they lacked funds or discipline, but because they believed myths that simply aren't true. Today, I want to address the most common myths I've encountered and share how my own experience taught me to avoid them. Myth number 1. I need a huge starting amount to benefit from compound interest. This is hands down the most common misconception. Many people think that if they don't have tens of thousands of dollars to invest upfront, compounding won't work for them. I used to think this too when I was first starting out in my early 20s. I remember sitting with a client who had saved only $500 a month. They were hesitant, thinking it wasn't enough to make any difference over time. Here's the truth: compound interest rewards consistency and time more than the initial amount. Even small, regular contributions can snowball dramatically over the years. Let me give you an example from my own portfolio. I started investing just $200 per month into a low-cost ETF when I was 24. By the time I reached 40, that investment had grown to over $80,000, thanks entirely to reinvested returns and consistent contributions. Compare that to someone who waits until they have $10,000 to start. They often end up with less because they've lost those critical years of compounding. The takeaway: start small, start early, and let time be your ally. Myth number 2. High returns always guarantee wealth. Another dangerous myth is that all you need is a high rate of return, and compounding will automatically make you rich. I've seen many investors chase hot stocks or high-yield funds thinking this is the shortcut to wealth. Here's the reality from my personal experience: high returns come with high risk, and risk can destroy compounding. I once advised a client who invested in a fund promising 15% annual returns. The first year, it soared. The next year, it crashed 40%, wiping out most of the gains. The lesson? Compounding works best with consistent, reliable returns, not volatile windfalls. I learned early that slow and steady often wins the race. For most investors, a diversified portfolio yielding 6 to 8% per year compounded consistently over decades beats chasing high returns with unpredictable swings. Myth number 3. I can withdraw anytime without consequences. Many investors think that once they invest, they can dip into their accounts anytime without impacting their long-term growth. This myth is especially common among new investors who see their portfolio grow and feel tempted to take just a little out. I've learned the hard way that every withdrawal interrupts the magic of compounding. Even small withdrawals can have a disproportionate effect over time. Here's a personal example. Early in my career, I had a savings account earning modest interest. Tempted by a minor expense, I withdrew a small amount, less than $500. It didn't seem like much at the time. But over the next decade, that amount, had it stayed invested and compounded, would have grown to nearly $1,000. Multiply this by several withdrawals, and you can see how easily your compounding advantage disappears. Key lesson: treat your investment accounts like a compounding engine. Don't touch them unless absolutely necessary. The more you leave untouched, the more powerful the compounding effect. Myth number 4. inflation doesn't matter for compounding. A common mistake I've seen among investors is ignoring inflation. People get excited when their account balance doubles or triples, but they often fail to consider the erosion of purchasing power over time. I remember explaining this to a client whose portfolio grew impressively on paper. They were thrilled until we adjusted for inflation. Suddenly, their real wealth hadn't grown nearly as much as they thought. For example, $100,000 invested over 20 years at a 7% nominal return grows to about $386,000. But if inflation averaged 3% per year, the real purchasing power is closer to $208,000. Still growth, yes, but not as dramatic as people often imagine. The takeaway: always consider real returns, not just nominal gains. Compounding works best when your investments consistently outpace inflation. Myth number 5. I can time the market to maximize compounding. This is a trap that even experienced investors fall into. The idea that you can wait for the perfect moment to invest or jump in at market lows often leads to missed opportunities. From my personal experience, the investors who tried to time the market often ended up missing the biggest growth days, which have an outsized impact on compounding. I've seen portfolios fall behind simply because the investor stayed on the sidelines waiting for perfect conditions. The secret I've learned: consistent, disciplined investing over time outweighs trying to time the market. Compound interest multiplies the money you invest regularly, not the money you invest sporadically. Myth number 6. Compound interest is only for long-term goals. Some investors think compounding only applies to retirement or decades-long investments. While it's true that the effect is strongest over long periods, I've learned it can also benefit shorter-term goals when used correctly. For instance, I once advised a client who wanted to save for a down payment in 5 years. By reinvesting their monthly contributions in a high-yield account, they grew their savings more efficiently than a traditional savings account would have allowed. The compounding effect in even a short time frame gave them a measurable advantage. The lesson: compounding can be leveraged for medium-term goals too, not just retirement. So here's the takeaway: compound interest is incredibly powerful, but it only works if you know how to use it properly. Starting early, reinvesting gains, minimizing fees, and staying consistent are the secrets most investors overlook. Remember my first mistake? I thought leaving money alone was enough. Years later, after optimizing strategies, I've seen exponential growth in my own portfolio and in my clients. You can do the same if you follow the rules. If you want more tips like these, subscribe and hit the bell emoji. I'll continue sharing advanced investing strategies, wealth building tips, and insider knowledge from over 10 years of corporate finance experience. Don't leave your wealth to chance. Start compounding the right way today and watch your money grow.